Okay, so I didn't have a blank one, so we're just going to go with this, and I'm just going to explain to you. Okay, so the table shows the number of people at a carnival at certain times during the day. What is the average number of people at the carnival per hour between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m.? So we are looking at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. Now, average in this case means rate of change or slope. I realize that some of you just found the average. However, on the practice quiz, we went through and found the slope. These are your two x's right here. These are your two y's. So you could have written those out as 112 and 220. Okay. And then we just plug those in. This is x1, y1, x2, y2, and I plugged those in here and got 20 minus 12 over 2 minus 1. 20 minus 12 is 8, 2 minus 1 is 1, so it's 8 over 1 or 8. Second one, find the slope. All you had to do for this one was look at the triangle. You went up 2, you ran 3, that's a positive slope, so it's positive. This one a lot of you had struggles with. Apparently I just did the same problem twice here. That's why it's all crossed out. Anyways, f of x, remember you can rewrite that as y equals negative 3x plus 5. Okay, and we need to find the y-intercept, which we did here by substituting x with 0, and then that cancels, and we get 5, so our y-intercept is 0, 5. And then we find the x-intercept by replacing f of x with 0 equals negative 3x plus 5. Move 3x to the left side and equals 5. Divide both sides by 3, and you get 5/3 or 1.66. So that's what you would graph. This here is the y-intercept. This here is the x-intercept. Now, the slope is the coefficient before the x. That's why I just put m equals negative 3. But you can also use m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? And this would be x1, y1, and this would be x2, y2. And you would have 0 minus a 5, no, minus 5, yeah. And then you would have x2, which is 5/3, minus 0, and you would have 5 over 5/3, and then you would have to invert and multiply by 3/5, and you get 15 over 5, which this is negative, which is negative 3. Okay, but on your retake, if you just put the slope is negative 3 because it's the coefficient, that is fine. A lot of you didn't find the slope, and that's why you got some wrong. This next one, same exact type of problem. We're looking for our y-intercept, so we substitute x with 0. This cancels, and we have y equals 4, so our intercept 0, 4. Then we have our x-intercept. We replace y with 0. We have 1/4. So we move this negative 1/4 x to the left side. When we do that, it changes to positive and it equals 4. Then you have this right here. And this is where a lot of you made mistakes. To get x by itself, you have to multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. So you multiply by 4 over 1 and get 16, and then your y is 0. I changed this problem here, and so I didn't realize it wouldn't even be on the graph, so I think that might have thrown a lot of you off. Now again, the slope is the coefficient in front of the x, so the slope is negative 1/4. It's fine if you use that. method. Okay, next problem. Brenda earned, most of you got this one right. So, we have write a direct variation equation for the amount of money Y she earns working X hours. So we had Y equals KX. You knew she made $7 an hour, which is where we got this. Most of you realized that you had to plug in some values for X. You got to choose them and put those in for X and then get your Y's and draw your line. Then we got down to this one, and some of you had some issues with it. And I think a lot of it was, I changed this on you. It said before, circle the equation that does not represent direct variation, and I changed it to the equation that does represent direct variation. A is the only one that represents direct variation because it's written in the form Y equals KX. You can't just have these direct variation doesn't have these random numbers at the end, okay? Those are y-intercepts, and y-intercept for y equals 1/3 x is 0, and like we did on number 5, it crossed at 0. So, this one, all you had to do was look at 4 places where it crossed these horizontal and vertical intercepts perfectly. It crossed right there, it crossed right there, it crossed right there, and right there. And all you had to do was pick 4 of them and list your x's. So this was -4, -4. Our second one was -3, -2. Our next one was 0, or -2, 0, -2, 0. Our next one was -1, 2. And this final one was 0, 4. All you had to do was pick 4 of them. That crossed perfect. Okay, this one, all you really had to do, I took this, was if you look at -2, 2, and you graph that, it graphs right there. It lies on the line. If you graph -3, 2, it's here. Doesn't lie on the line. Okay? Or you could have taken this equation and, like I did, substituted 2 for y and -2 for x and solved just the right side, and if they equaled each other, it's on the line. This one didn't equal each other when I did that, so it's not on the line. But this simple method right here, which about probably 65% of you took, works. Okay, this next one. Now I gave you, on this one, I gave you 1 out of 2 if you just filled in the x values, even if the y values didn't match up. Okay? You had to pick 3 random points for x. Then you had to substitute them in for this function rule and get your y's. So, if I have 450 minus 15 times 0, that cancels the 15x term and I have 450. If I put 1 in there, that makes it 450 minus 15, which is 435. And if I put 2 in for x, it's 15 times 2, and 450 minus 30 is 420. Alright? Then I take 2 points. I took this as my x1, this is my x2, this is my y1, and this is my y2. It doesn't matter which 2 points you take as long as you take 2 points and keep them in the same order. So we had, why isn't this working? 1, 435, and we had 2 and 420. Now obviously your numbers could be different if you did different numbers, right? So this might not look like your paper because you have different numbers, but then I substituted 420 minus 435 over 2 over 1, and I got -15 over 1 for my slope. Slope means every 1 ice cream sold, the total decreases by 15 ounces. My y-intercept, as you can see, I made some mistakes on this when I was doing corrections because sometimes I'm not smart. So, y equals 450 minus 15x. We're looking for the y-intercept, which means we replace x with 0. These cancel here, which means our y-intercept is 0, 450, and the y-intercept is telling us the amount of ice cream when the machine is full. Okay, because it can hold 450 ounces. This next one, I messed up on the practice quiz solutions, so I might have taken 1 point off on A, but in the computer, in the grade book, I gave you that point back, and if you got this problem right, you got an extra point. So for whatever reason, when I was doing the practice quiz, I got these numbers mixed up, and I switched them. I put my X's up top and my Y's in the bottom. Alright, so because I did that, I gave you the points. So our first pair is 3 and 3,900. Our second pair of points is 7 and 10,500. This is x1, y1, x2, y2, and I just substituted in here. And when I subtracted, I got 6,600 over 4, which simplifies down to 1,650 over 1. That means he pays $1,650 per month for rent. The y-intercept is 0, 0, and that means he hasn't lived in the apartment, so he hasn't paid any money. So, if you have your corrections sheet filled out correctly, and it looks like you really thought through those sentences and not just putting I didn't know how to do it or I don't know, because most of you, except a few, answered every single question with something, which means you had some idea of how to do the problem. So I need you to write what you did wrong. I will give you a 5% automatic raise. So then at that point you can decide if a B is good enough, because some of you will have a B at that point, and if it's not, then you can come do a retake. If it is good enough, you can be good. Some of you that got high 80s will end up with an A, and then you should be good to go. But if you take the time to go through this video, I'm going to give you a 5% raise for being responsible and doing the right thing.